Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This morning we're going to begin an adventurous journey into the 11th canto Srimad Bhagavatam, one of the treasured sections of the entire Srimad Bhagavatam, Uddhava Gita. The painting that you see here, very, very beautiful painting, it's Uddhava coming before Krishna. We're going to read briefly the section where this scene is taking place, where Krishna is reclining against a young banyan tree, specifically a young banyan tree. And Uddhava, the river by the side there is the Saraswati River. And by providential arrangement, Maitreya is also present. Which is not, for the record, this isn't where Uddhava Gita took place. Uddhava Gita took place in Dwarka, and what we're going to do this morning is give a little overview of the chapters leading up to and following Uddhava Gita. Uddhava Gita spans from Canto 11, Chapter 7 through 29. 7 through 29, Canto 11. And we're going to be touching on what happens before and after the actual Uddhava Gita section. And in addition, listen carefully, there's going to be a description of the sequence of all these events that lead up to what you see in the screen here, which is found, a description of it is found in Canto 3. Now, why is Canto 3 describing something that happens in Canto 11? Well, we should understand that the presentation by Shukadeva Goswami of Srimad Bhagavatam is not restrained by chronology. It's not necessarily a chronological unfolding of the events of this canto. And if you haven't already received, you will be receiving a version of that chronology. It took a while for me to sort it out, so it may take a while for you to take a look at my notes and sort it out. We'll begin with Canto 11, Chapter 1, which comes after the very last chapter of Canto 10. So we're in Dwarka. Chapter 1 opens with a plan. Vasudeva is a resident of Dwarka, and he has a plan, as great personalities will do, to arrange for performances of yagyas for the elevation and benefit of the whole society. And following that yagya, the Bhagavatam describes, specifically Shukadeva Goswami describes, Krishna was in the home of Vasudeva, and he suggested, after the yagya was completed, that all the sadhus and sages and yagya performers go to a nearby place, Pindaraka, and have their Brahminical activities and association together, and they would be served very nice meal and on so many gifts and so forth and so on. And we find in Chapter 1 this unfortunate event where Samba, pictured at the bottom here, dressed in a sari, young boy, as if he was a pregnant woman looking away, The boys said she's shy, but she wants to know what will be the gender of this child, a boy or girl, to the sages, basically mocking the sages. So the sages understood their behavior and they uttered a curse. We'll tell you, the child that will be born of this woman will be the destruction of the entire Yadu dynasty. And the boys went, uh-oh, we've offended the Brahmanas. And they immediately went to Ugrasena and explained to him everything that happened. After deliberation, Ugrasena decided that lump of iron should be taken to a person who knows how to grind iron into powder, and then the powder should be thrown into the sea. And so that was done with the exception of one piece that wouldn't grind no matter what. So that was also thrown into the sea. And then we're going to find out later in chapter 30 of this canto that a fish swallowed that lump that wouldn't grind, and a fisherman caught the fish that swallowed that lump of iron that wouldn't grind. The fisherman sold the fish to a hunter. The hunter found that the piece of iron, used that piece of iron to fashion the tip of an arrow, and that was Jara, Jara, the person who was the hunter that fired that arrow and hit Krishna in the heel. And Krishna departed the world with that pastime of his own for the sake of bewildering the atheists. And the powder, it is not disclosed in this section, but it's in the later section. We'll get there. That powder washed up to the sea at Prabhas, which is by the sea, a holy place by the sea, and that those powdered or filings of iron mixed with the bamboo by the shore, by the sea, and those became hard like iron and ended up in weapons for the Yadu dynasty to destroy each other. But let's go back to chapter 1 of this canto. Now we're going to chapter 2. In chapter 2, the scene opens with Narada instructing Vasudeva. The situation it describes. Narada, eager for Krishna's associations, instead of traveling around the universe, which he normally does, he was spending lots of time in Dwarka, major time in Dwarka. And one day he visited the home of Vasudeva, who received him very nicely. And Vasudeva spoke, saying, previously I offered prayers to have Krishna as my son, but I didn't inquire properly about liberation. So can you please describe to me that process of pure devotional service that frees one from all kinds of fear? Narada was very pleased with his question, and to satisfy his question, he then narrates the entire exchange that goes from chapter 2 to almost the end of chapter 6, the discussion between Maharaj Nimi, who was a king of Videha, the same place where Janak was the king, and the Navayogendras, who are sons of Rishabdev. The Navayogendras are those effulgent beings floating in the sky up there. They could travel anywhere like Narada can travel anywhere, only they don't even need a Veena, they just traveled anywhere they like. It's a detail, but classically, the Navayogendras are given as examples by our acharyas as existing in Shantaras. There's King Nimi standing up with his arms raised. Down below, on the left side, that's the Brahmanas that were performing the yajna when the Navayogendras arrived. And in the foreground on our right, that's the ministers of the king and so forth. So the king presented many questions to the Navayogendras, and they gave their answers very profound philosophy, and all this was narrated by Narada to Vasudeva. So that's most of chapter 6, chapter 2 through chapter 6. And the concluding part of chapter 6 narrates the demigods paying a visit to Dwarka. They eulogize Krishna because they had previously gone to the ocean of milk and petitioned the Supreme Lord Vishnu to relieve them of the burden of the Raniyak kings, which has now been fulfilled. And so they indicate that. And in addition to, if you so desire, you may return to your transcendental abode because your commitment to us is now fulfilled. We're very grateful and protected. They requested Krishna to withdraw the Yadu dynasty. And they departed. Krishna began to consider what he had already considered, that the Yadu dynasty has to be removed. My mission is not complete because generations following the Yadu dynasty, they'll be so powerful, and the Kali Yuga deviations that will come, they're unstoppable. And so Krishna, understanding that and the appeal of the demigods, Krishna orders the Yadus to go to Prabhas for purification of the reaction from the Brahmana's curse, which was described in chapter 1 of this canto. And then Uddhava, being very dear to Krishna, understood the intention. He heard of this order. He understood Krishna's intention. And so he approached Krishna to request him, plead with him to, when you depart, take me with you. Carry me when you depart. That's the end of chapter 6, which is the curtain opens for Uddhava Gita, starting with chapter 7. There's Uddhava with the same bodily complexion as Krishna, placing his head on Krishna's feet, pleading with him in various ways. And their dialogue is recorded in the Bhagavatam, which we're going to be discussing. And in this way, chapter 29 ends. Chapter 30 begins. This is after Uddhava Gita. All of this was going on while the residents of Dwarka were preparing to go to Prabhas to counter the curse of the Brahmanas. Then chapter 30 opens with Krishna reminding them, go quickly, perform the proper rituals, and so forth. And in the course of their activities, they took rice wine, as we've heard so many times, and they became a little tipsy. And one person said something challenging to another person without the detail, and some combat began. You know, Kshatriyas do these things. And as the result, Krishna withdrew the entire Yadu dynasty, with, of course, the exception of himself and Balaram. He and Balaram go to a nearby place. Balaram departs. A very fascinating description of how Balaram departs this world. From his mouth comes an Anantashesh, he mounts an Anantashesh, and off they go, and Balaram's gone. And then the next scene in chapter 30 is Daruka, who is the chariot driver of Krishna, understands intuitively also what happened. Daruka comes to Krishna, understanding Krishna is going to depart. Krishna consoles him, Krishna gives him service. He sends him to Dwarka with 2 messages for the Dwarkavasis. Please tell them what happened here at Prabhas, and please instruct them from me to go to Indraprastha for their protection, because the whole of the Dwarka city is going to disappear. So, with great reluctance, but given the instruction to do so, Daruka leaves. And now we're going to read a nice section from Canto 3, Chapter 4. You can take a note because I'm not going to read the commentary. but I'll just read the verses. Canto 3, Chapter 4. This is now connected with Vidura, who's been on pilgrimage. After leaving Hastinapur before the Kurukshetra battle, he's been on pilgrimage for 34 years. He comes to a place where he finds Uddhava, and that's the scene. That's what we're going to read, starting with text 3. The personality of Godhead, the previous text 2, as the friction of the bamboos, destruction takes place, so also at sunset, by the interaction of the faults of intoxication, all their minds became unbalanced and destruction took place. The personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, after foreseeing the end of his family by his internal potency, went to the bank of the river Saraswati, sipped water, and sat down underneath a tree. The Lord is the vanquisher of the distresses of one who is surrendered unto him. Thus, he who desired to destroy his family told me previously to go to Badrikashram. So at the end of Uddhava Gita, that's chapter 29, at the end of chapter 29, Krishna instructs Uddhava, I'm going to depart. It's going to be really rough. Kali Yuga will begin. I don't want you to have to suffer. And so go take shelter of the devotees of Narayana in Badrikashram. So he's heading for Badrikashram, very reluctantly. And another explanation is also given that when I appeared in this world, I gave my association to my devotees. One place I didn't go was there. You are my representative. You have some service, not just solace and protection, but you have some service. Share the teachings that you've understood from me with them. You'll be my representative. So the end of text 4, Canto 3, Chapter 4, text 4. Thus, he who desired to destroy his family told me previously to go to Badrikashram. So at the end of chapter 29, he says, go to Badrikashram. And so he started going. Yet, in spite of my knowing his desire to destroy the dynasty, O Arindama, or Vidura, I followed him because it was impossible for me to bear separation from the lotus feet of the Master. Now, in the purport of text number 5, text number 6, that's a mistake. Thus, following, I saw my patron and master, Lord Shri Krishna, sitting alone and deeply thinking, taking shelter on the bank of the river Saraswati, although he is the shelter of the goddess of fortune. The Lord's body is blackish, but is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, and very, very beautiful. His eyes are always peaceful, and they are reddish like the rising morning sun. I could immediately recognize him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead by his 4 hands. Different symbolic representations in yellow silk garments. The Lord was sitting, taking rest against a young banyan tree, with his right lotused foot on his left thigh, and although he had left all household comforts, he looked quite cheerful in that posture. And the purport to text 8, that has to be changed in the document. It says 5, but it's 8. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the Lord's sitting posture Wait a minute here. The Lord's sitting posture, keeping his back against the newly grown banyan tree, is also meaningful. Ashvata, a banyan tree, is so called because the tree does not die very quickly. Semicolon. It continues to live for many, many years. His legs and their energies are the material ingredients of the tree, which are 5 in all, to list them. The material energies represent the banyan tree, represented by the banyan tree, are all products of his external potency and therefore kept to his back. Now, there's further detail you can read, but actually the reference is towards the end of chapter 29. This is, after that, but in the handout that you have, it's actually correct. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, while Uddhava was en route to Badrik Ashram, he heard about the Lord's journey to Prabhas. He heard about it. He knew that the Lord had given the instructions, but now he heard when he's on his journey to Badrik Ashram, he left for Prabhas. He knew what that meant too. Turning back and following Lord Krishna from behind, he saw the Lord alone just after the withdrawal of the Yadu dynasty. After being again mercifully instructed by the personality of Godhead, along with Maitreya, who had just arrived, Uddhava felt his knowledge of the truth reawaken, and then, by the order of the Lord, he went on his way. So that's part of the sequence. It's why we see Uddhava came all the way back to Dwarka, or Prabhas, or by Prabhas, where the river flows into the sea, is where Prabhas is. And he saw the Lord in this position. He's describing this to Uddhava, the sequence of events. At that time, after traveling in many parts of the world, Maitreya, pictured there in the background, with the beard and the cane, Maitreya, a great devotee of the Lord, and a friend and well-wisher of the great sage Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas, reached that spot out of his own perfect accord. Providential arrangement. Maitreya showed up at the right time in the right place to hear this particular discussion between Uddhava and Krishna. Purport reads, Maitreya was one of the disciples of Maharshi Parashara, the father of Vyas. Thus, Vyas and Maitreya were friends and mutual well-wishers. By some fortunate accident, this is Prabhupada's purport, Maitreya reached a place where Lord Sri Krishna was resting. To meet the Lord is not an ordinary incident. Maitreya was a great sage and a learned scholar-philosopher, but not a pure devotee of the Lord, and therefore his meeting with the Lord at that time may have been due to agyata sukriti, or some unknown devotional service. Pure devotees always engage in pure devotional activities, and therefore the meeting of the Lord was natural. Elsewhere it says he's a Jnana Mishra Bhakta. He's a Bhakta Maitreya, but not pure. And he became pure just by this experience. And then later Maitreya imparts instructions to Vidura. So Maitreya was greatly attached to him, the Lord, and he was listening in a pleasing attitude with his shoulders lowered, with a smile and a particular glance upon me. Having allowed me to rest, the Lord spoke as follows. O Vasu, that's Krishna speaking to Uddhava. O Vasu, I know from within your mind what you desired in the days of yore when the Vasus and the demigods responsible for expanding the universal affairs perform sacrifices. You particularly desire to achieve my association. This is very difficult to obtain for others, but I awarded it unto you. So now there's a detailed explanation which you can read, but like Bhishma formerly was a Vasu, grandfather Bhishma, Uddhava was formerly a Vasu, not immediately preceding becoming Uddhava, apparently, but as a Vasu. So who are the Vasus? In the days of 8 Vasus, the demigods in the upper planetary system, who were responsible for the management of the universal affairs, performed a sacrifice in the days of yore, desiring to fulfill their respective ultimate goals of life. At that time, an expansion of Uddhava, acting as one of the Vasus, desired to become an associate of the Lord. The Lord knew this because he is present in the heart of everyone as Paramatma, the superconsciousness. In everyone's heart, there's a representation of the superconsciousness who gives memory to the partial consciousness of every living entity. So he fulfilled that partial expansion of Uddhava's desire to become the Lord's associate, and so he became the Lord's associate. Continuing text 12. O honest one, your present life is the last and the supermost, because in this term of life you have been awarded my ultimate favor. Now you can go to my transcendental abode, Vaikuntha, by leaving this universe of conditioned living entities. Your visit to me in this lonely place, because of your pure and unflinching devotional service, is a great boon for you, O Uddhava. In the lotus millennium, Padmakalpa, in the days of yore, at the beginning of creation, I spoke unto Brahma, who is situated on the lotus that grows out of my navel, about my transcendental glories, which the great sages describe as Srimad Bhagavatam. So, Brahma's life is divided into 2. In the first half, that's called Parardha. Canto 3 describes Parardha. And the first half is called the Padma. The first of the Yuga cycles is called Padmakalpa. The first day of that first Parardha. So that's what he's referring to here. Uddhava said, "O Vidura, when I was thus favored at every moment by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and addressed him with great affection, my words failed in tears, and the hairs on my body erupted. After smearing my tears, I, with folded hands, spoke like this. Oh, my Lord, devotees who engage in transcendental loving service of your lotus feet have no difficulty in achieving anything within the realm of the 4 principles of religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, liberation. But, oh great one, as far as I am concerned, I have preferred only to engage in the loving service of your lotus feet. No thanks to the 4 Purusharthas, I only want your service. My Lord, even the learned sages become disturbed in their intelligence when they see that your greatness engages in fruitive work, although you are free from all desires, that you take birth, although you are unborn, that you flee out of fear of the enemy and take shelter in a fort, that's Dwarka, although you are the controller of invincible time, and that you enjoy householder life, surrounded by many women, although you enjoy in yourself. And that's discussed in chapter 2. O my Lord, your eternal self is never divided by the influence of time, and there is no limitation to your perfect knowledge. Thus, you are sufficiently able to consult with yourself. Yet you called upon me for consultation, as if bewildered, although you are never bewildered, and this act of yours bewilders me. My Lord, kindly explain to us, so he and Maitreya, if you think us competent to receive it, that transcendental knowledge which gives enlightenment about yourself and which you explained before to Brahmaji. He wants a Bhagavatam class. When I thus expressed my heartfelt desire to the Supreme Personality God, the Lotus-eyed Lord instructed me about his transcendental situation. And it doesn't give that section here. That's another Uddhava Gita section. I have studied the path of understanding self-knowledge from my spiritual master, the personality of Godhead, and thus, after circumambulating him, I have come to this place, very much aggrieved due to separation. So that gives the chronology. The chronology again. Uddhava Gita ends with Krishna instructing Uddhava to go to Badrik Ashram. He's on his way to Badrik Ashram. Meanwhile, Krishna again instructs the Yadus to go to Prabhas. They go to Prabhas. This big self-destruction of the Yadu dynasty occurs. Krishna and Balaram then go to the shore of the ocean. Balaram departs. Dwarka comes. Krishna sends him to Dwarka, instructing, go tell them what just happened, and instruct them they should immediately make preparations to go to Indraprastha for protection, because Dwarka is going to go underground, within the water. It's going to disappear. Because many of the Yadus were in Prabhas. So there's some remaining. The ladies, the queens, they weren't there at Prabhas. And others. So some are still remaining. And many are gone. So Dwarka leaves. Right on time, Uddhava had doubled back, having heard about Krishna's, in fact, having departed from Prabhas, knowing what that meant. So he followed Krishna. He saw him, as you see in this painting, by the side of the river Saraswati in a secluded place. Maitreya showed up. He asks Krishna for further instruction. The little summary we heard, by hearing that instruction, his consciousness was fully restored. Supposing you're a nice devotee and you hear something and you feel enlivened, and some time passes and your consciousness slips, what do? You do what Uddhava did, you go back and hear Srimad Bhagavatam again, as he heard it, or as he gave it to Brahma. And then he is restored and he carried on. And Maitreya went where Maitreya went, and later Vidura meets up with Uddhava. Uddhava tells him all of this what happened and sends him on his way to go meet Maitreya, and that's how the rest of the third canto, fourth canto, fifth canto is Maitreya narrating to Uddhava. So we're going to be discussing, starting tomorrow morning, the first chapter. Starts with text number 1 of chapter 7, canto 11. And please remember that it's taking place in Dwarka. There's Uddhava again, at the lotus feet of Krishna, hearing so many chapters of Krishna speaking, transcendental knowledge. I selected something from one passage, and we're going to end with this. It's nice. From this chapter 7, text 7, purport. The real truth is not material, nor is it temporary. The real truth is called Atma, or the eternal soul. And among all eternal souls, one is supreme. He is called the personality of Godhead, and in his original form, he is known as Krishna. The knowledge-gathering process culminates in perception of the inconceivable transcendental form of Krishna. And there's an image you're going to see again later. There's so many people, each with super soul within each one of them. So now we're ready for the first verse tomorrow morning. But that's to give you a background. And let's see if there's some discussion.
Guru Maharaj, thank you for this class. My question is, Uddhava was serving Krishna, he was with the Supreme Lord. What is the need for any more instructions? He would have been already realized. And as you mentioned that at the end of the lecture that, when we hear something and we, are enlightened, but after some time it goes down, that is because we are not in touch with the Supreme Lord, but he was, directly in touch. So what is the need for this whole Uddhava Gita? It is for us, like,
yes.
Arjuna, okay.
Whenever there's some lapse in the part of a perfected soul, we can understand it's induced by Krishna for our benefit.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. If time is permitting, Maharaj, I have 6 questions, but if not, then...
Let's do 2 and then we'll see if there's others and we can circle back.
Sure, Maharaj. So Maharaj, one thing you mentioned that the way Krishna left this mortal world is to bewilder the atheists. Can you kindly elaborate on that?
That's what our acharyas say. Okay. Krishna fulfills the desires of everyone. He's most interested in the desires of the devotees, but he doesn't neglect the non-devotees. For the non-devotees, he performed a pastime to bewilder them.
Okay.
Same for the Yadu dynasty destruction. It was for a purpose of removing them and sending them back to their eternal destinations. Some of whom they were appearances of demigods to assist Krishna, but another purpose aside from relieving them was bewilder the atheists. How can Yadu dynasty members become intoxicated and destroy each other? It sounds demoniac.
Yeah.
So it's specifically described to bewilder.
So just keeping them in the conception they want to have, just continuing with that.
I missed what you just said.
So Krishna keeps them with the conception what they have and what they want to see.
Who's they?
The atheists.
Okay. Yeah, Krishna is fulfilling the desires of everyone.
Right.
Everything that exists comes from Krishna. There isn't something that exists that doesn't come from Krishna. So the mentality of the atheist is something that Krishna endows them with.
Okay.
And to support that, he does things sometimes that support that. Next.
So Maharaj, I was this image of 400 form of the Lord. So was there any specific reason that he was appearing in the 400 form at that time? Because he was in the normal 200 form while he was doing his pastimes.
That apparently, that's the way in which Uddhava liked to see him. So he appeared in the way that Uddhava liked to see him.
Okay. Yeah.
Vaikunthavasi.
Yeah.
Not, Vrindavan-vasi, Vaikunthavasi.
Yeah. Thank you.
Someone else in the room?
Maharaj. I was just thinking about Uddhava being one of the Vasus, and how he had the desire to,
Be an associate of the
being,
Lord.
being an associate of the Lord. Yeah. The other Vasus, they also had, performed the yajnas, and they also have desires. Is there a particular reason why Krishna chose to fulfill the desire of
We don't know what the others were desiring.
Okay.
He doesn't specify. We don't know. They could have been desiring to go to the moon. We don't know.
And sometimes devotees have this desire to be associate of the Lord as well. Whether they have the qualification or not is something that they need to look into, but that desire is there.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, will there be, I guess Krishna is in our hearts, and he will be listening to those desires.
Of course. But one of the things that we heard last night at your home is, if you want, one who has such a desire needs the mercy of one who has the Lord's association. That's how you enter into the Lord's entourage. That's our Gaudiya Vaishnava principle. Dasa dasanudas. We're always praying to the previous perfected souls, acharyas, and supplication at their feet for their mercy. And it's not just like, we're beggars, but for the highest thing, not, for money or, material ambition, but for the mercy to become involved in the association of the pure devotees of the Lord like them. Yeah, it's like your son's question last night. Just like that.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. This chapter, from 2 to 6, it says pure devotional service frees one from all kind of fear.
That's something, one sentence little summary of what that whole section is describing. I just cut and pasted that from the chapter summary of chapter 2.
Yeah. So in case if, we all, at least I have some fear all the time. So, but we are not on that level of pure devotional service.
Yeah.
So, what do we do?
Manage
for that?
the fear. What do you do with negative emotions? You manage them.
Yeah.
And how do you manage them? It depends on what it is and the degree of it and so forth. That's a whole topic. Managing negative emotions. But one of the things to do, one of the things that's helpful in that managing of those emotions is you go into the mode of goodness place. You pause. You're feeling fear. That's over there. I'm the one that's feeling that. I'm different than that. What's that rooted in? It's rooted in the bodily conception. So knowledge helps in detachment. It doesn't dismiss the emotion, or it doesn't immediately dismiss the bodily conception, but reduces its influence, because that influence is just in the mind. And we're not the mind. We're not the body. We're not that emotion that's within the mind about what is fearful of. Yeah? Like some people can't leave their house because it's COVID. And they're anyway, so there's one thing to be cautious, and it's another thing to be gripped with fear. And that person who's cautious could infect COVID by some, unintentional, unsuspecting way. All precautions, you're not going to live forever. So, knowledge helps with detachment. And then bhakti further helps. You invest in that which is for the pleasure of Krishna, and that mind feeling subsides because light has become stronger by that Krishna connection through devotional service. Knowledge and detachment, bhakti and detachment. Jnana vairagya, yukta vairagya. Yukta meaning engaging in devotional service. Lead to detachment. It doesn't mean that thing that you perceive as a threat isn't a threat, but the feeling of that thing changes. Let me live my life in devotion to Krishna, so when that event does come of death or whatever it is, I'm ready. And then one can become fearless by bhakti, strong tivra bhakti. That's how to help manage. There's different ways and details, but those are two principles. 3, mode of goodness, knowledge and detachment, bhakti and detachment. By the mode of goodness, negative emotions go down the pyramid. And you're higher on the pyramid, higher towards light by mode of goodness. One of the features of goodness is knowledge, cultivation of knowledge. With that knowledge comes detachment naturally. You have something? No. You have something? Online. Let's do some online, then we'll circle back. Okay. It's 8:23.
Guru Maharaj, we have saved the online questions just in case if you want to. So we can ask during the next session. First question from Sri Radhika Mataji. I know that Uddhava is Lord Krishna's cousin, but
Yes.
will you please clarify how he is familiarly related to the Lord?
My understanding is this. Vasudeva had a sister and Vasudeva had a brother. At least one sister and one brother, maybe more. And the brother's name, if my memory serves me right, is something like Devabhaga or something like that. So that's Uddhava's father, who is Krishna's father's brother. They're first cousins. Just like the Pandavas are first cousins. Because Devaki. Anyway.
Another question from Sri Radhika Mataji. In Lord Rama's pastime, it seems that the fact that his brothers are part Vishnu seems to have some relation to the color of their appearance. What is the significance of Uddhava's bodily color and appearance being so similar to the Lord's?
The Lord's arrangement, that's the cause. And his devotion was so absorbed that his complexion was like that of Krishna. It is said, like in Gaura Lila, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was feeling separation from Radha, his bodily complexion became golden. Sometimes Radha, in her feelings of separation from Krishna, her golden complexion became blackish. Now, those are not supported statements from Bhagavatam or anything, but there are pastimes where that's described. And so one explanation is because of his absorption in Krishna, his form was blackish, which would then say that, well, okay, then Radharani should also be blackish. But she was golden because that's her complexion. So we can circle back and say he's of that complexion because that's his complexion. And services that he would have to do for Krishna where he would be mistaken for Krishna. Just like Subal, one of Krishna's cowherd boyfriends, his complexion and stature and everything looked very much like Radharani. So he had a pastime purpose of sometimes appearing as if Radharani and fooling people, etc. For the Lord's pastime purposes, Uddhava is this complexion.
Question from Snehavalli Mataji. So Maitreya didn't hear Uddhava Gita when Krishna first spoke. He, along with Uddhava, heard the transcendental knowledge the second time Uddhava met Krishna. Is this correct?
That's correct. No, and just a little qualifier. I did not understand that for a long time. And therefore I was speaking in a way that was not correct. I thought Uddhava was there, Maitreya was there hearing Uddhava Gita, and I would often speak like that. I came to understand that's not correct. He heard what's described in chapter 3, or canto 3. We don't know the details of what he heard. It's not provided in the Bhagavatam. Maybe it's provided in some other literature, but it's not in the Bhagavatam. But so her understanding is correct.
From Akhilesh Tiwari, can chronology of Bhagavatam be shared for online audience as well?
What's this little document? Sure.
This document has been shared.
Okay, good news. It's already there. So, Haribol.
Another question from Snehavalli Mataji. So Uddhava didn't speak Uddhava Gita to Vidura. It's only Maitreya who shared transcendental knowledge with Vidura. Is this correct understanding?
Say the first part again.
So Uddhava did not speak Uddhava Gita to Vidura.
No.
It's only
Vidura, what we know is what's in the Bhagavatam. Now, it may very well be that Uddhava spoke additional things to Uddhava that's not in the Bhagavatam. It may be that Uddhava spoke additional things to Vidura that are not in the Bhagavatam. But we don't have the understanding that Uddhava spoke the entire Uddhava Gita to Vidura. We don't have that understanding. He said whatever he said. He gave transcendental knowledge for sure.
Next, another question is also regarding the resemblance of Uddhava. I think that has been answered.
Okay.
Snehavalli Mataji, third question. Uddhava's rasa changed and became a blade of grass in Vrindavana. He was in Sakya rasa. Is
Yes.
this again the correct understanding?
Yes. But he was a Sakya rasa outside of Vrindavan, and he valued getting the mercy of the Vrajbasis in Vrindavan so that he could imbibe their mood in Vrindavan, and specifically the gopis' mood. That was his hankering. And to get that mood, he wanted their mercy in the form of dust.
Two more questions. From Girivardhari Prabhu. If message is from Krishna, why it is called Uddhava Gita? Please enlighten us.
That's what our acharyas called it. You could say it Krishna Gita, if you like. But it's Uddhava Gita. And we could say Bhagavad Gita is Arjuna Gita. But it's called Bhagavad Gita.
Okay. Last question from Carlos Prabhu. We mortals needed more instructions coming from Krishna for our perfection and further possible salvation. Why he had to depart and leave Uddhava with such responsibility?
It was decided by him to have pastimes in the way that he decided to have pastimes. He's independent. He doesn't need a reason. He had pastimes. He wanted Uddhava, as intimate as was their relationship, to experience love and separation, then again meeting, then again love and separation, then again some service for him, and then again taking a blade of grass. It's just waves in the ocean. So why doesn't one wave move this way instead of that way? It's bhakti rasa. Yeah. Krishna is the chief.
One more question popped up. Sucharita Mataji. We have to get the mercy of Vrajavasis, also current residents of Vrajavasis.
This question came up at your home. And they're not in 100% the same position, consciousness-wise. The consciousness of the Vrajbasis that we find in the Bhagavatam and who are taking part in Krishna's direct pastimes, they're Shuddha Bhaktas. and the current residents of Vrindavan are generally not Shuddha Bhaktas. Doesn't mean we don't respect them. We respect them. We regard them as very special souls, very fortunate and special souls, but they're not Shuddha Bhaktas. Your 4 more questions. We have some 8:32. And if there's further questions, you save.
Maharaj, one was already answered in one
Okay.
explanation. This is, you read Maharaj, Days of Yore. Can you please?
That's Prabhupada's language. It means ancient times.
Okay. And then I always think about this, that how Lord Ananta and Lord Balram are connected.
Ananta is his expansion.
So is there a particular reason why it is being shown in Naga or many who did that form?
Is there a particular reason? Because that's his Balaram's expansion. And he serves Krishna or Narayana or Vishnu in that way. Sankarshan is one of the names of Balaram. Yes?
Yeah.
Some detail which I'm not going to go into. But it's the serpent carrier of the Supreme Lord, Ananta Shesh.
Oh, okay.
And Ananta.
Then that iron powder that was thrown in the ocean, are there any effects of that in this Kali Yuga time?
I have no idea. It happened then, and if there's some reason, I have no idea. It was a pastime. I think it got gobbled up with the pastime.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. One question over here and we're done.
Yeah, so all these pastimes